My sister stood in my $850,000 home, arms crossed, eyes blazing with entitlement. "Dad promised this house to me," she declared loud enough for every guest at my housewarming party to hear. "It's my wedding gift." And then, the moment that still makes my blood boil, my mother nodded in agreement. "It's only fair, Samantha." I smiled, because I had been preparing for this moment longer than they could possibly imagine. What happened next didn't just change my family forever. It revealed the shocking truth about how far people will go to steal what you've worked for. And if you think your family would never do this to you, you're about to discover why 83% of Americans are currently experiencing financial stress from the people closest to them. 5 years. That's how long it took me to save every penny for the down payment on this house. While my sister Sarah lived rent-free in my parents' basement, planning her dream wedding on their dime, I was working 2 jobs and eating ramen for dinner. While she got handed everything, college tuition, car payments, credit card bailouts, I learned early that being the responsible one meant being the invisible one. My parents never once asked about my house hunting process, never inquired about mortgage rates or down payments, never seemed curious about how a 28-year-old teacher could afford an $850,000 home in this market. They just weren't interested, not until the day I handed them the keys to tour my new place. That should have been my first warning sign. See, according to recent studies, 52% of Americans say money is the most negative factor affecting their mental health. But what they don't tell you is that family manipulation around money creates a special kind of trauma. It's not just about the dollars. It's about having the people who are supposed to love you most treat you like a personal ATM. And then, when you finally achieve something on your own, having them try to claim credit for it. For 3 weeks, I planned the perfect housewarming party. I invited colleagues from school, friends from college, neighbors I'd just met. I wanted to share this moment, the biggest achievement of my life, with everyone who mattered to me. I spent hours organizing the menu, decorating every room, making sure the lighting was perfect for photos. I was so proud. This wasn't just a house, it was proof that all those years of sacrifice meant something. Every skipped vacation, every declined dinner invitation because I couldn't afford it, every night I fell asleep calculating budgets, it all led to this moment. Standing in my living room that Saturday afternoon, watching people admire the crown molding I'd specifically chosen, the hardwood floors I'd saved extra for, the kitchen island I'd dreamed about for years. I felt like I had finally made it, finally proven that the quiet, responsible daughter could achieve something extraordinary. I had no idea that in about 30 minutes, my entire family would try to rip it away from me. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 p.m. Through the peephole, I could see Sarah's perfectly styled blonde hair and my mother's nervous smile. Dad was conspicuously absent. "Couldn't make it," Mom had texted earlier. Another red flag I missed. Sarah swept in, wearing her engagement ring like a spotlight, immediately commanding attention from my guests. She'd always had that gift, the ability to walk into any room and make it about her. Growing up, I'd watched her charm teachers out of failing grades, talk her way out of every consequence, convince our parents that every mistake was really someone else's fault. But today was supposed to be different. Today was mine. "Samantha," she gushed, air kissing my cheek. "This place is, wow, really impressive." The way she said impressive made it sound like she was surprised I was capable of anything noteworthy. You must be so grateful to Dad for making this possible. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Grateful to Dad? Mom stepped closer, lowering her voice. Well, honey, we know you couldn't have afforded the down payment on a teacher's salary. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Family helps family. That's when I realized they had constructed an entire alternate reality. In their version of events, my success was actually their generosity. My achievement was their gift. My independence was their charity. For 20 minutes, I watched them work the room. Sarah casually mentioned to my colleague Janet how generous our father was. Mom told my neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, about how they helped Samantha get on her feet. They were rewriting history in real time, turning my guests into witnesses to a completely fabricated story. And then Sarah made her fatal mistake. She positioned herself in the center of my living room, where the afternoon light caught her engagement ring just right, and raised her voice loud enough to quiet the entire party. You know, she announced, this house has such special meaning for our family. Every conversation stopped. 23 people turned to look at her. Dad actually promised this house to me years ago as my wedding gift. He's been planning it since I got engaged. She looked around the room with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged in her life. Samantha's just been taking care of it for us. The silence was deafening. I could feel my guests' confusion, their discomfort. Some of them knew how hard I'd worked for this place. Others were meeting my family for the first time and trying to process what they were hearing. But it was Mom's response that broke something inside me. It's only fair, she said firmly, nodding at the crowd. Sarah's getting married. She needs a place to start her new life. Samantha's still single. She doesn't really need all this space. And honestly, she added with a patronizing smile, we always intended this house for Sarah anyway. The gaslighting was masterful. In less than 2 minutes, they had positioned me as the temporary caretaker of their property, made my single status sound like a character flaw that disqualified me from homeownership, suggested that my 4 years of mortgage payments were just, what, rent, created social pressure by making this declaration in front of an audience. This is what toxic family dynamics look like when they're weaponized. It's not screaming or obvious abuse. It's the quiet, confident assertion that reality is whatever they say it is. It's the assumption that you'll be too polite, too conflict avoidant, too desperate for family harmony to call them out publicly. They had forgotten one crucial detail about me. I'm a teacher. I deal with entitled behavior for a living, and I never ever go into a battle without proper documentation. I felt something shift inside me, a coldness, a clarity I hadn't experienced since the day I first looked at mortgage calculators and realized I could actually do this on my own. The hurt was still there, sharp and hot in my chest, but underneath it was something stronger, absolute certainty about what needed to happen next. That's interesting, I said, my voice cutting through the uncomfortable murmur of my guests. Really interesting. I walked to the kitchen island where I'd placed my laptop bag that morning. 23 people watched me in complete silence. Sarah's confident smile flickered slightly. Mom's eyes narrowed. You know, I continued, opening my laptop with deliberate calm. I've always been really good at keeping records. Comes with the teaching job, I guess. All those lesson plans, grade books, documentation. I clicked open a folder labeled House Documents. I actually have some really interesting paperwork you might want to see. Sarah laughed, a high, nervous sound. Samantha, we don't need to get into boring paperwork at a party. Oh, but I think we do. I smiled at her, the same smile I give students who try to claim they turned in assignments they never completed. Because if this house was always intended for you, there should be some documentation of that, right? Some paperwork showing Dad's financial contribution? The color started draining from Sarah's face. Let me show everyone what the actual records look like. I turned my laptop screen toward the crowd. This is the purchase agreement from 18 months ago. Buyer, Samantha Elizabeth Johnson. Co-signers, none. Down payment source, Samantha Johnson's personal savings account. I clicked to the next document. Mortgage application, applicant, Samantha Johnson. Co-applicants, none. Credit score used for approval, Samantha Johnson's 847 score, built over 7 years of perfect payment history. Another click. Bank statements showing the $170,000 down payment transfer, source account, Samantha Johnson savings, contributing parties, Samantha Johnson. With each document, I watched my sister's confident demeanor crumble. The entitled smile disappeared. The commanding posture shrank. My guests started murmuring, not in confusion now, but in understanding. Wait, my colleague Janet said slowly. Are you saying Samantha bought this house entirely on her own? That's exactly what I'm saying. I pulled up another screen. Property deed, recorded with the county 18 months ago. Sole owner, Samantha Elizabeth Johnson. No co-owners, no liens from family loans, no gifts requiring disclosure. Mom stepped forward, her voice tight. Samantha, this isn't necessary. We can discuss this privately. No, Mom, we can't. I met her eyes steadily. Because what just happened here wasn't private. You made a public claim about my property in front of my guests. So we're going to resolve it publicly with facts instead of fantasy. I turned back to my laptop. Homeowner's insurance policy effective 18 months ago. Policyholder, Samantha Johnson. Beneficiaries in case of my death. My designated beneficiaries, which I chose myself. Click. Property tax records paid by Samantha Johnson. From account, Samantha Johnson's personal checking. Click. Utility setup records. Name on all accounts, Samantha Johnson. Deposits paid by Samantha Johnson. By now, Sarah had gone completely pale. The confident woman who had commanded my living room 5 minutes earlier looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. And just to be absolutely clear, I said, pulling up one final document. Here's my complete banking history for the past 5 years. Every deposit from my teaching salary, every withdrawal for house-related expenses, every dollar saved, every sacrifice made. I looked directly at Sarah. Feel free to point out where Dad's promised contribution appears in these records. The silence stretched for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 30 seconds. My guests looked from me to Sarah to Mom and back again. The truth was undeniable, documented, and completely humiliating for my family. That's when I realized the most shocking part of this whole situation. They had genuinely believed their own lie. Sarah's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. The confident woman who had waltzed into my home and declared ownership was now visibly shaking. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flush of humiliation creeping up her neck. "Ilia," she stammered, looking desperately at Mom for backup. but Mom was having her own meltdown. The woman who had nodded so confidently when Sarah made her claim was now staring at my laptop screen like it contained evidence of alien life. "There must be some mistake," she whispered. "Your father said—" "What exactly did Dad say?" I asked, my voice razor sharp. Because I'd love to hear the specific conversation where he promised to give away a house he never owned, never paid for, and never had any legal claim to. Janet, my colleague, let out a low whistle. "Wait, so your parents thought they could just take your house? The house you bought with your own money?" The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Because that's exactly what had happened. My family had constructed such an elaborate fantasy that they genuinely believed they had the right to claim ownership of my property. They had convinced themselves so thoroughly that they felt comfortable making this declaration in front of witnesses. "This is ridiculous," Sarah snapped, some of her fight returning. "Family doesn't work this way. We share things, we help each other. You can't just hoard everything for yourself." And there it was, the entitlement laid bare. In Sarah's world, my success was somehow their property. My hard work was their achievement. My financial independence was actually selfish hoarding. "You're right," I said calmly. "Family does help each other. Let me show everyone exactly how much our family has helped me over the years." I pulled up my banking app and projected it onto my laptop screen. Here's every transaction with family members for the past 7 years. Let's see. Mom and Dad's financial contributions to my life since I turned 18. I scrolled through the records with theatrical precision. $0 for college tuition. I took out student loans. $0 for my car. I bought it used and paid cash. $0 for rent assistance, grocery money, emergency funds, vacation loans, or any other support. My guests were riveted. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about years of family dynamics being exposed in real time. "Now let's look at Sarah's account," I continued, switching to a different folder. "I've been keeping track because I'm funny that way." Sarah went white. "You can't just—" "College tuition paid by parents, $67,000. Car purchase assistance, $23. Credit card debt bailouts, $31 over 4 incidents. Wedding expenses committed by parents, $45,000 and counting." I looked up at my sister. Total family financial support, $166,000. And that's just what I know about. The math was devastating. While I had received exactly nothing, Sarah had been handed more money than most people see in a lifetime. And now she wanted my house too. Mrs. Peterson, my elderly neighbor, shook her head in disgust. I've never seen such audacity in my 68 years. That's when Sarah made her second fatal mistake. Instead of backing down, instead of acknowledging the evidence, instead of apologizing for the humiliation she'd just caused, she doubled down. "This isn't fair," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "I'm getting married. I need a place to live. You're just sitting here in this huge house, all alone while I'm stuck in that tiny apartment." The selfishness was breathtaking, even faced with undeniable proof that she had no claim to my property. She was still arguing that she deserved it more than I did. "Your apartment that costs $2,800 a month and is paid for by our parents?" I asked sweetly. "That tiny apartment?" Sarah's face crumpled. She knew she'd been caught, but she couldn't stop digging the hole deeper. "You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm getting married and you're still alone." The cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. Even in defeat, even caught in a lie, she was still trying to hurt me, still trying to make my success about my failures, my achievement about my shortcomings. But something interesting happened in that moment. Instead of feeling hurt, I felt nothing, numbness, clarity. The emotional hold my family had over me just snapped. You know what, Sarah? I closed my laptop with a definitive click. You're absolutely right about one thing. I am alone in this house, and I've never been happier about anything in my entire life. I turned to address my guests who were watching this family meltdown with a mixture of horror and fascination. I want to apologize to all of you for this drama. This was supposed to be a celebration, and my family has turned it into a circus. Don't apologize, Janet said firmly. This is the most educational thing I've seen all year. I'm taking notes for when my own family tries this nonsense. A few people laughed, breaking some of the tension, but I wasn't done yet. Mom, I said, turning to face her directly, I want you to understand something very clearly. This conversation we just had, this public humiliation of your daughters arguing over property ownership, this happened because you and Dad created a fantasy and decided to make it my reality. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Samantha, you never meant to get caught, I interrupted. You meant every word. You genuinely believed you could walk into my home and redistribute my property to your preferred daughter. The only thing you didn't mean was for me to have documentation proving you wrong. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. I think it's time for you both to leave, and I think it's time for our family to have some very serious conversations about boundaries, respect, and reality. Sarah gathered her purse with shaking hands, her face blotchy with tears and rage. This isn't over, she hissed as she passed me. Yes, it is, I replied calmly. It's been over for 18 months. You just didn't know it yet. Mom paused at the threshold, looking back at me with something like surprise. When did you become so cold? When I realized that being warm and accommodating meant being taken advantage of by people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, I answered. I learned it from the best teachers, my own family. After they left, my party transformed into something completely different. Instead of the awkward tension that had dominated the past hour, there was an energy of support and even celebration. My guests weren't just impressed by my house anymore. They were impressed by my spine. I cannot believe what just happened, said Mark from the history department. Did your sister really think she could just claim your house? She didn't just think it, I replied, accepting a glass of wine from my neighbor Tom. She was so convinced that she announced it at a party. That's not delusion. That's entitlement so deep it's become pathological. Over the next 2 hours, my guests shared their own stories of family financial manipulation. Apparently, what had just happened wasn't unusual. It was epidemic. Parents who treated successful children like family ATMs. Siblings who felt entitled to equal outcomes regardless of equal effort. Extended family members who viewed other people's achievements as community property. You did something most people never have the courage to do, Janet told me as she prepared to leave. You fought back with facts instead of emotions. You documented everything instead of hoping for the best. And you did it publicly, which means they can't rewrite history later. She was right. By handling this confrontation in front of witnesses with evidence, I had protected myself from future gaslighting attempts. There were 23 people who had seen my family try to steal my house and watched me prove them wrong with documentation. But the real victory wasn't the public vindication. It was the realization that I didn't need their approval, their version of events, or their definition of family loyalty to be happy in my own home. That night, after everyone left, I sat in my living room in my house, paid for by my money, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. No guilt about family harmony, no anxiety about disappointing people, no fear that standing up for myself made me a bad daughter or sister. Just quiet satisfaction in knowing that I had built something beautiful and protected it when people tried to take it away. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Dad. When I finally answered, his voice was tight with panic. "Samantha, we need to talk. Sarah told me what happened yesterday, and there's been a huge misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding, Dad. Just a huge lie that got exposed." "That's not— Look, I never said I was giving her your house. I said I wished I could help her get a house like yours." Sarah misunderstood. And Mom misunderstood too, and they both misunderstood so completely that they felt comfortable claiming ownership in front of my guests. Silence, then. "Your mother and I want to take you to dinner. We need to clear this up." "There's nothing to clear up. I own my house. I paid for my house. I will continue living in my house. That's not a conversation topic. That's just reality." "Samantha, you're being unreasonable. Family should be able to discuss these things." "Dad, there's nothing to discuss. This would be like me calling you up and announcing that I've decided your car belongs to me now. Would you want to discuss that?" Another long silence, then, "It's not the same thing." "It's exactly the same thing. The only difference is that you never expected me to fight back." But fighting back was exactly what I had learned to do. Over the following weeks, I implemented what I came to think of as my fortress strategy: comprehensive protection against future family manipulation attempts. First, I updated all my legal documents: new will, new power of attorney, new beneficiaries on every account. I made sure that no family member had any legal claim to any aspect of my life or property. Second, I changed my communication patterns. No more immediate responses to family emergencies. No more financial discussions of any kind. No more detailed sharing about my life, my work, or my plans. Third, I built what my therapist called chosen family. People who supported my success instead of trying to claim credit for it. Colleagues who celebrated my achievements. Friends who understood the value of boundaries. Neighbors who had witnessed my family's behavior and offered ongoing support. The hardest part wasn't cutting off the manipulation. It was learning to live without the constant drama. For years, my emotional life had revolved around family crises, emergency requests, and the exhausting work of managing other people's feelings about my choices. Without that chaos, I discovered something surprising. I actually really enjoyed my own company. I liked my quiet house, my orderly life, my financial independence. I liked being able to make decisions without consulting a committee of people who had never supported my goals. 3 months after the housewarming incident, Sarah called me crying. The wedding was off. Her fiancé had discovered her credit card debt and some inconsistencies in her financial stories. The $45,000 wedding that my parents were funding was now a $45,000 lesson in consequences. "I need a place to stay," she sobbed, "just temporarily, until I figure things out. I understand that's difficult, I replied calmly. I recommend checking rental listings in your price range. Samantha, I'm your sister. I can't believe you'd let me be homeless. You won't be homeless. Mom and Dad have a house with your old room in it. You've lived there rent-free before. But I need my own space. I need independence. The irony was breathtaking. Sarah, who had tried to steal my independence, was now demanding independence of her own. Sarah, who had never paid for anything, was now discovering that independence costs money. Then I suggest you do what I did, I said. Get a job, save money, and buy your own place. That's not fair. You know I can't afford what you can afford. Mainly and. You're absolutely right. I can afford my lifestyle because I made specific choices for 7 years. I lived in tiny apartments, drove old cars, skipped vacations, and saved money. You made different choices. You chose comfort, spending, and financial dependence. Those choices have consequences. So you're just going to abandon your family? I'm going to live my life without enabling people who feel entitled to the results of my work. That conversation was the last meaningful contact I had with Sarah. Not because I was angry, anger had long since been replaced by indifference, but because we literally had nothing left to discuss. My parents made several more attempts at reconciliation, each following the same pattern. Acknowledge that mistakes were made, minimize the impact of those mistakes, and suggest that I was overreacting by maintaining boundaries. But I had learned something crucial from that housewarming party. Family relationships based on manipulation and entitlement aren't worth preserving. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your achievements to make other people feel better about their choices. 6 months after, defending my house with a laptop full of receipts, I hosted my second housewarming party. This time, the guest list included only people who had earned the privilege of being in my space. People who celebrated my success instead of trying to diminish it. People who understood that love means wanting the best for someone, not wanting the best from someone. As I looked around my living room that evening, at friends laughing, colleagues sharing stories, neighbors who had become chosen family, I realized I had gained something far more valuable than a house. I had gained the ability to distinguish between people who loved me and people who simply wanted access to the benefits of my hard work. And in protecting my property, I had discovered my own power. The house was never really the point. The point was learning that I deserved to keep what I had earned, to enjoy what I had built, and to share my life only with people who added value instead of demanding it. My $850,000 house was expensive, but learning to defend it, that education was priceless.